Okay, hello everybody. I'm Ginny and I'm going to talk turkey. Um, I will put the first slide up and I need to tell you that this was a hiking trip. So there'll be a lot of pictures about hiking, so that may or may not be interesting to you because that's mostly what it was. I'm just going to see if I can get rid of the boxes so I can see what I'm doing. I can't find my cursor. Okay, the heck with it. Okay, so this was a trip to Turkey. Those were the dates, March 28th to April 9th. Um, this was a small group of 9 people. The leader was a woman named Jules Lewis. This is a woman that I had met through a friend who leads kind of adventure trips. She's written books. She's a motivational speaker. She coaches leadership behavior, wellness, things like that. And so I went on a trip with her once before in 2018 that some of you who've been in the travel group for a while might remember that. It was a dog sledding trip to the Arctic in 2018, and it was really a great trip. So when this one came up, I decided to give it a shot. Like that trip, I was the only American on the trip. The other people were from England, Guam, Abu Dhabi, and the suburbs of UAE. And we had a Turkish bus driver and a Turkish tour guide. So the route we took was to do the Lycian Way, and this is 540 kilometers or 335 miles. And we didn't do all of that. We just did the most scenic portions that totaled, I'm guessing, about 60 miles, doing about 5 or 6 miles to 12 miles to 15 miles a day. And these were coastal paths, pine forest, rugged mountains, beautiful scenery. And this Lycian Way was created in 1999 by a British hiker and historian named Kate Clow. She had the vision of a long distance footpath, and she submitted the idea to a competition run by a Turkish bank, and she won. That seemed so odd to me. But anyway, she led the development of this path. And it basically follows ancient Lycian paths, mule tracks, and Roman roads that were connecting cities and ports. So they connected them all together and they connected it from Fete to Antalya, and it was waymarked by volunteers. So relatively new, 1999, that was created. So in the top, you can see Turkey and all the countries that border it. And in the bottom, you can see the Lycian Way that starts at that Dalaman on the left that I've circled. And then we did those little pieces where I've drawn the lines and then flew out of Antalya. I can't seem to figure out how to get my boxes out of the way. It's kind of annoying. Anyway, just to tell you a little bit about Turkey, I just wanted to ask, how many of you have been to Turkey? Have a lot of you gone to Turkey?
Other than being in the airport?
Yes, other than the airport.
No,
I've
no.
been there, Linda.
Okay,
I've been there.
Susan, I have not.
okay. So, it's an emerging country. It's a NATO member with the second largest military. It's the fifth most visited country in the world.
Oh,
Somehow that surprised me. Istanbul is the most visited city in the world. That surprised me. Antalya surpassed Paris and New York to become the fourth visited city in the world. They are a significant power in unmanned aerial vehicles. They're committed to climate targets. They host large numbers of refugees from Russia, Ukraine, Syria. They're in the top 10 for health tourism. And the cab drivers told me about how safe they were. So when you get in one of these vehicles to go like to the airport or anywhere, they log into a system who you are and where you're going. And if you change your mind, they go back in the system and they change it in the system. Every hotel that you go to, they record in a system that you're there. So if you ever disappear, the police can track pretty quickly where you've been and where you were last seen. So I don't know. That certainly can make you feel safe. It also, to me, was a little creepy. But anyway, he was very proud of how safe they were and that they had eliminated terrorism in their country and that it was very safe. He told me they had 3,000 policemen at the airport. Anyways, as you can see in the picture, they border the Black Sea on the north, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Iran on the east, Iraq, Syria, the Mediterranean on the south, and the Aegean Sea, Greece, Bulgaria on the west. So lots of neighbors. There are 85 million people there, ethnic Turks and the minority ethnic Kurds. There's a Muslim majority, and there's 47 ethnic groups in Turkey. Ankara is the capital. Istanbul is the largest city. It was once, as you probably know, Constantinople. They have quite a history with the Greeks and then the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, the Ottomans, and the Turkish Republic. They are ruled by the Prime Minister Erdogan. He's been there since 2014, and it's an executive presidential system, but a lot of backsliding to a competitive authoritarian system. Very diversified economy with auto, electronics, textiles, agriculture. Their airline is one of the largest in the world, the airport. They have the longest suspension bridge in the world. They have frequent earthquakes, universal health care, and 21 UNESCO sites. So, so that's, oh, and yes, of course, the bird turkey was named due to the trade of guinea fowl from Turkey to England. So there you go. So that's a little bit about Turkey. Istanbul has about 15 million people there, and it has a narrow waterway that connects the Sea of Marmara to the Black Sea. And therefore, Istanbul is split on both the European and Asian side of that river. And so the city sits on two continents. So this is basically where we went. We flew into Heathrow, went from Heathrow to Istanbul, did some touring in Istanbul, then flew from Istanbul to Dalaman to begin the trek, trekked all these different places, basically going south and toward the east. And then we flew back to Istanbul from Antalya, which is a really old town. Some of the highlights, Istanbul, I'll show you some pictures of some of these things. We spent some time there, very old city, lots of history, but again, mostly hiking and views and ruins everywhere. We did some dining in Turkish homes. We did UNESCO sites, hit the beach, hit the dunes, took a boat trip, climbed Mount Chimera, and had a lot of food. Okay, so let me just start with Istanbul. This is I'm probably going to say all these things wrong, the Hagia Sophia Mosque. It was a church, then it was a mosque, and then it was a museum. It was built in the 6th century when Constantinople was the capital of the Byzantine Empire. So initially a cathedral, it took a workforce of 10,000 laborers 6 years to build it. And it was the largest cathedral for like 1,000 years. And then it got captured by the Ottoman Empire and it became a mosque. So we did a tour here. Our guide didn't tell us to bring scarves. I happened to have one because we were bringing dress clothes, and I brought a black dress with a bunch of different scarves to make it look different. So I had my scarf. They bought those little paper things that look like hospital gear up in the left corner. And they were really serious about you wearing those in the mosque. Mine kept slipping off, and like the mosque, the scarf police were all over it, telling me to get that back on right away. You can see in the bottom right that because it was a cathedral originally and then became a mosque, they covered up and covered over some of the early cathedral drawings. We next went to the Blue Mosque, which is right across in the very same square. This was from the Ottoman era. This is a UNESCO site, and it's a working mosque, and the tiles and motifs are in blue, which is how it got its name. So we went in there as well. You take your shoes off before you go into any of these places, which creates a huge traffic jam as you're entering. Then outside, this huge courtyard area with a fountain was the hippodrome. So back in the day, this is where they would have their circuses, their sporting. It was the center of their sports. They would have chariot races. It was pretty interesting. They also had this obelisk, and it was erected in that hippodrome in part to commemorate the defeat of the usurper Maximus. And it's made of granite. It's almost 20 meters tall. And Theodosius had it divided into three pieces to bring it to Constantinople, and that only the top section survived. So that's all you're seeing. It's now over 3,500 years old.
Was the hippodrome an actual structure that's not there anymore?
No, it's that big courtyard area. I mean, it looked different then. Now it has the fountain and stuff, but it was just like a big, if you think about a chariot race, it was that big
All open.
uh, oval shape,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they would be entertained. They would sit around, and they said it was used a lot to divert people from the troubles of the day. So it was like sort of like the gladiator kind of thing. You go there for entertainment. Then there was the Grand Bazaar. This place was crazy. It was inside a covered market, um, covered streets. There were 4,000 shops in here that employed 26,000 people. And it's the number one most visited tourist spot in 2014, um, with 250,000 to 400,000 people a day. It is crazy. They have multiple gates, and big sections in this bazaar that will have, here's the jewelry section, here's the book section, here's the jeweling, here's the women's clothing, here's the Turkish delights, which is our candy, leather, rugs, ceramics, it on and on and on. So you can spend a lifetime in here. Those things up in the upper right hand corner are these long rolls, and they have like nougat and nuts on the top, all different flavors, all different kinds. Every time you walked anywhere near one of those, they would take this tool out that looked like a garden tool, and they would snip a piece off the end. Here, try it, try it, try it. You could stand there and try pounds of it. They just keep cutting more pieces and giving them to you. So that was a blast. It was really delicious. I bought a lot of that. Um, so anyway, this is a Grand Bazaar. It's a crazy place. Spice Market, another crazy place. Um, so while the Grand Bazaar is the largest and the most famous of the covered bazaars, the Spice Market wins the prize for being the most colorful, fragrant. Um, it's a lot of fun. You can taste the goods, and it was built in 1664. And it's just, again,
Hmm.
huge, tons and tons and tons of spices.
Beautiful colors.
Beautiful colors, very aromatic. Okay. Um, so we left Istanbul. We flew. It was a pretty short flight, like an hour and a half maybe, to Dalaman, I think it was called. And then we started our trek. So we visited some tombs in the rock. This was in Fethiye. They were carved into the side of the Turkish mountain, and they looked like they were entrances to temples, but they were really ornate facade of ancient Lycian tombs. Very basic inside, not much in there, just slabs. But the Lycians believed that their dead were carried to the afterlife by magic winged creatures. And so they placed their honored dead in geographically high places, like the cliffside. So these are dating back to the 4th century. Um, Many of these entranceways have tall classical columns, as you can see, intricate reliefs. They've been weathered a lot, as you can tell. The older tombs are often no more than holes dug into the rock. So we climbed up there, peeked in, and the views from there were fabulous. And then we started our trek. I'm just going to show you some pictures of what the terrain looked like. So there's some pretty rocky stuff. There were ruins everywhere. So I felt like we were constantly passing these old ruins. The views from the mountains were spectacular, looking out at the ocean. At some points, Greece is like an hour away by boat. Um, this was the group that I was with. They were pretty much all women. There was one guy. And again, they came from all over. The mountains. So interesting hiking. I was a little intimidated about this trip because a couple of the women had done Everest Base Camp. They were all, except one person, younger than me. They had all been training. And so I thought, oh crap, what have I done? But amazingly, I had a much faster pace than most of them. So I couldn't go really slow because if I did on rocks, I would lose my balance. I'm more of that hippity hoppity kind of hiker. And so I wound up sort of being in the front a lot just because I needed to keep a pace. I couldn't keep going and stopping, going and stopping. And so here I am with another woman who had the same issue. She was always needing to go a little faster. She was 79, so I felt like we were the old ladies leading the crowd. So we did have some weather. We had an incredibly windy, rainy day, and it's tough when you have a plan to do these parts of the hike. We decided we would go ahead and do it. So on the left is the one of the places that we stayed, and I just wanted to see if I could show you what the wind was like. Let's see if this works.
Hmm.
It was howling, blowing stuff everywhere. Um, the tree on the right, which looked like a piece of artwork to me, is called a strawberry tree. And it has small, round red berries that are alcoholic. It has this glossy, leathery, dark green leaves, urn-shaped white to pinkish flowers, and this peeling red-brown bark. And it can grow from 10 to 35 feet. We saw a bunch of these, and each one looked like this amazing sculpture. They were really cool. So this is us hiking in the rain. It was pretty slow going. Um, so everybody was using hiking poles. I can't use them because I have some wrist issues, but people were relying on those heavily with this rough terrain. But the views were worth it. This was the view from that rainy day, and it was really beautiful. Next, we did a hike the following day to these tombs, and whole families would be buried in here. They didn't believe in cremation, so each family would have a tomb, and the limestone apparently disintegrates the body. And so the Muslims are buried laying on, when they're in the ground, they're buried laying on their right side, facing Mecca. And I think they're put that way in these tombs as well. So there was this woman tending her goats walking around there. It was pretty interesting. She had a cell phone, which was sort of odd to see. Next, we went to Xanthos, a UNESCO site, to see the ruins, and they were pretty spectacular to see. A lot of discussion about the Roman versus the Byzantine and all the differences between the different down where we are on the left is where they would do plays. And then the Byzantine section, we hiked over there, is where you would see all these mosaics, and they were pretty amazing. More ruins, more ruins. If you look back up in the corner by the mountains, you see all these they're actually greenhouses. And they went on and on and on forever. And we asked them, like, what is happening there? He said, that's where they grow tomatoes. It looked like a city. And we hiked another day or two, saw the same thing again, and we're like, more tomatoes? And he said, no, those are all red peppers. So lots of lots of vegetables. So on our hike, we a couple of times went and dined in the homes of local people there. And that was a really great experience. So you leave your shoes outside, you come in, they lay this big cloth down on the floor. You get down on the floor and they bring in just all these bowls and bowls of food. They don't speak English, so we didn't have much discussion with them except through our guide. Their houses were really basic, not very not a lot of decoration on them, but the food was fabulous. So let's talk about the food a little bit. They are known for their kebabs, lots and lots of lamb. I don't eat lamb, so I had to work around that. But they have the doner kebab, which is a marinated lamb that is cooked vertically, and they would slice it. They'd serve in pita bread. They'd serve on rice. Lots and lots of kebabs. Bread constantly. So in the upper left corner, you see they'd bring these big bowls that look like pita bread or puffed up bread. But every meal really fresh, made that day kind of bread. They, for every meal, would bring out, they called them mezes, small bowls, like we would think of them as tapas or appetizers, but they would just automatically bring them out. And they would have honey and olives and dried fruit and eggplant and fresh yogurt, molasses, tahini, fava bean paste, beetroot, eggplant, um, rice. And so you always had these little plates. So you'd have to remember that when you were ordering a meal because you would get really full. Up in the center there, you see the woman who is cooking over that open fire. She was making pancakes and she would use her stick and some oil to cook them in over that fire. And they would be pancakes with cheese or spinach or potato. They were delicious. And it was at the restaurant in the bottom right where we were having that. So always lots of fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, salad stuff. And then the food was just really fresh and good. And fish was really big. Saw the woman holding up the bones. It was delicious. It was tender, but you always had the full fish with the head. So we're always like nervous about those tiny little bones. The the breakfasts were these are both breakfast shots. So the breakfast would be like a salad bar. Lots of celery and tomatoes and um, lettuce. And I kept thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be hiking. I need something that will hold me more than this. They'd usually have a giant bowl of boiled eggs and they would have bread and occasionally a little bit of meat like ham or salami or something like that. But often it was all these kinds of things, which was healthy and good. But you had to eat a lot of it. And then we did a lot of outdoor eating. It was just beautiful. These places, seacoast towns, or places where we'd, be hiking and then we'd take a lunch break and we'd be on some beautiful deck up in the trees. The salads were spectacular, always so fresh. So it was really good food there, really good eating. And the views were really spectacular. So in the bottom left, this Turkish delight thing. They talked about it a bit, and I was dying to understand what Turkish delight was. It's actually the jelly that has like a powder on it. But they also serve those or sell those rolls that I'd mentioned before that look like logs, and they're a lot of times nougat with nuts, but so many flavors: pomegranate, chocolate, uh, some more kind of ones. It just was everywhere, everywhere. And then the lodging that we were in, all different kinds of places. And because we were doing a one way, our luggage would be carried by the bus from place to place. So we didn't have to carry any of that. And each place was really different, really unique. So the place in the upper left, that was my own little cabin. It was really cute and had everything you needed. I had my own bathroom. In the bottom left, it's a much more modern type of place. I couldn't even figure out how to turn the lights on. It was all like a glass and mirrory kind of place, very high tech-ish. Um, the one in the center, this was one of my favorites. This was in a place called Gay, and the place was called Gay Lighthouse. And the view, looking out at the water, is the view from my bed. It was crazy. Um, yeah. And below it, you see that bathtub in the glass? That was also part of my room. It was a little glass petition on my off my bedroom. And then in the bottom right, that was the restaurant. And then above was the place we stayed in Istanbul. That's what my room looked like. So the accommodations were really great. Again, this place, that Gay Lighthouse, this was their pool. It's like an infinity pool and really beautiful, just views everywhere. And then on the right is my room. And you probably can't hear the sound very well, but I did a little video of the room. Here is my room at Gay Lighthouse Hotel. Bathtub. Look at this view. Bed. Looking out. So it was quite a place. After dinner, I was obsessed with using that bathtub. So I went to the room. It filled up really fast. The water was super hot, filled it nearly to the top. So it's really deep. It was really hot. And I hop in, and this insane thunderstorm happens. The whole sky is lit up with lightning, big crashes of thunder. And I'm thinking, is this dangerous for me to be in this tub? I mean, there is glass between me and the outside, but I don't know. Is that safe? But it was quite a spectacular experience. Okay. And at that same lighthouse, this was a short walk from the lighthouse down to the ocean. And so I walked down there with a guide to look at the sunset, drink a beer. It was beautiful. We also did a trip on a boat, um, which was pretty cool. We took the boat to Semena and we hiked to a castle at the top where there was a tiny theater. And we got locked in, which was kind of an exciting moment. We had a barbecue on this boat. We were able to snorkel. There was a sunken city that they had hoped we'd see. So unfortunately, we get on the boat, we go there, and it starts to rain. And so everyone sort of lost their oomph about, I don't think I want to go in the water. I think we'll just sit here and drink wine. And I decided I just absolutely had to get in the ocean. It was the Med. So I made myself get in and swum around for a while and came back out. And an hour later, the sun came out. It was glorious, and everyone jumped in the water, and it was warm. It was beautiful. It was really, really nice. So this was the hike that we took to the top of this little mountain and the views, which is beautiful. Um, you paid like an entrance to get into this place, and then you would hike up. And so when we went to leave, we somehow got ourselves locked in, and no one had any idea what to do about it. So we are trapped. We're trapped in this place. Go through this window because gate is locked. So eventually someone came and got us out. But this was the view from up there. It was beautiful. These seacoast towns were spectacular. They were colorful. the mosques and the minarets, I think is how you say it, the towers that indicate it's a mosque, were just beautiful and all slightly different. Lots of these markets with lots of fresh fruit and um, Turkish delights, lots of bread. Oh, I mentioned this before. These were the tomato greenhouses. They just went on and on and on. It was amazing. This is another ruin that we went to. It was really beautiful. There are so many. There are so many. And they would all typically have the theaters with the stadium kind of seating. Anyway, lots of them. We then went to a place called Myra, which says they are the home of Santa Claus. Um, so they say that St. Nicholas of Myra um, lived there from March 270 to December 343, also known as Nicholas of Bari. He was born to wealthy Christian parents. He was an early Christian bishop of Greek descent from the maritime city of Patara during the Roman Empire. And because of the many miracles attributed to him, he's also known as Nicholas the Wonder Worker. So St. Nicholas is the patron saint of sailors, merchants, archers, children, brewers, pawnbrokers, toy makers, unmarried people, and students. And his legendary habit of secret gift giving gave rise to the folklore of Santa Claus, St. Nick. So the earliest accounts of his life were written centuries after his death. And in one of the earliest and most famous incidents from his life, he is said to have rescued three girls from being forced into prostitution by dropping a sack of gold coins through the window of their house each night for 3 nights. So their father had a dowry for each of them. There's another story that told of him calming a storm at sea and saving three innocent soldiers from execution and chopping down a tree that was possessed by a demon. And this picture here was another famous legend that told how he resurrected three children who had been murdered and pickled in brine by a butcher who was
Oh,
planning to sell them as pork during the famine. So anyway, he was a bishop there, and he was the origins of Saint Nick, so they say. More pictures of hiking. We did a river crossing. Wasn't too dramatic, but um, and then again, a lot of rocket climbing, woods climbing, um, beautiful views, beautiful beaches. And then we went to Mount Chimera, um, where natural gas vents have continuously burned for thousands of years. It's caused by methane gas that ignites upon contact with the atmosphere. And the mountain's name is linked to the Greek myth of the Chimera, if I'm saying that right, a fire-breathing monster. And it's depicted as a three-formed beast that has a lion in front, a python in the back, and a goat in the middle. So we hiked along here, and you would see these little fires everywhere in the rock. Some were really small, so you had to be really careful you didn't sit down in the wrong spot. A guide told us people have been burnt in the butt by not paying enough attention. And we brought marshmallows and we cooked the marshmallows on these fires. It was pretty fun. We did hit the dunes at sunset, and it was pretty spectacular. And then I thought I would finish with some things that I found to be really different, at least really different to me. There were cats everywhere, everywhere. They pretty much are outdoor cats, um, but Istanbul has the largest street cat population that's due to a combination of historical factors, religious beliefs, and community care. So historically, the cats were valued for controlling rats in the city's wooden houses during the Ottoman times. Islam, the dominant religion in Turkey, emphasizes cleanliness and has a positive view of cats, that further contributes to them being cared for and accepted. And the city's residents feed them all the time and provide shelter for the cats. So it creates a whole community, but they are everywhere. So behind those glass doors there was our breakfast place. And you had to go through the doors really quickly because the cats would like scoot in there. And then they would be under your feet and rubbing against you and jumping up on the chair, jumping up on your lap. And so you were constantly chasing the cats out of your restaurants, out of your eating places. It was really, they were just everywhere and just very accepted. The other was the toilets. You guys who travel a lot, you've probably seen this before, but it's the hole in the floor toilets, known as squat toilets. And they're traditional Turkish toilets. And you have to squat over the hole in the ground. And the design is meant to ensure minimal contact with the toilet surface, which is considered more hygienic. So anyway, there were usually the choices, but there were plenty of those. Um, this is when I realized that I knew nothing about the Middle East. I've never gone there. I've traveled a lot. I've never been here. And I was so ignorant about so many things. Fortunately, there was an Islamic woman and her husband traveling with us. They had just finished Ramadan, which they had done for 30 days, fasting from sunrise to sunset, which I thought was amazing that they could do that. And they were just finishing that on the night they joined us. So they had to wait until after 7 before they could eat. And then they would start eating like very slowly so their body could adjust. And so we're outside eating, and this really loud sound, I thought it was like an air raid or something, it um, startled me. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And the woman explains to me it's the call to prayer, which I did not know about. And along with that, you would see these spots around the city for ablution where they would wash. It's a cleansing ritual. This is an important part of cleanliness and purity in Islam. So before they worship, they go and wash their hands and their feet and their mouth, their nostrils, their arms, their ears, their hair. And you would see these all over. Um, so I'm going to see if I can. Did you guys hear that?
No,
You couldn't hear?
nope.
Oh, oh darn it. Anyway, it was it's this very loud and it just startled me. It went off at 5:30 in the morning. It goes 5 times a day. Um, there was a mosque right behind my room in one of the places we stayed, and it would make me practically jump out of bed when this sound went off. Anyway, they have this call to prayer 5 times a day, um, and it's done like usually at 6:30, at 1, at 3:40, 6:05, 7:30, and it corresponds to sunrise and sunset with the first 2 hours before first light. So everywhere we went, hiking, all over, we would hear that sound throughout the day from the speakers from the mosque. And it's a prayer to cleanse you of your sins through the day. So the Islamic woman and her husband, I was asking them lots of questions about all of this. And he said that the story is that the Prophet Muhammad went to God and said, okay, how should we worship you? And God said, you should pray to me like 100 times a day. And Muhammad said, these are humans. They're not going to do that. How about 5? And then they agreed on 5. So whether that's it was an interesting story anyway. Um, the other fascinating thing to me was this ice cream. So lots of unusual kinds, goat milk and sesame oil walnut, cactus fruit, all different kinds. And they have these long sticks that they use to serve it. And when they do it, it's a little bit of a show. So they do a little bit of a performance. They put orchid bulbs, it's used in the Turkish ice cream, and that helps make it very, very sticky.
Turkish ice cream. Wow. Okay, okay. Okay, today ice cream is okay. I'm getting it. I've got it. What's your name? Finish. Yes. Yeah, yeah.
So when the trip ended, we flew back to Istanbul and the whole group took off to head home. My flight, couldn't find a connector to leave immediately, so I spent another day in Istanbul and I decided to take myself out on a little date. So I talked to the cab driver about things to do, and he recommended a Turkish bath. Losing my voice here. So I went to the Turkish bath. The picture of me at the bottom, they take you into these little dressing rooms, give you this little paper thong to put on. You have your own key. You wrap yourself in a towel, lock your little room, and they take you to a sauna. Yeah, sauna. And the room is like all marble. You sit there and relax and get nice and hot. And then they led me into a giant room that had a huge marble circle in the center. They put a towel down, had me lay on that, and they put on these gloves that are like exfoliating kind of gloves, and they just scrub you, turn you over, scrub, bring you over to a fountain, dump buckets of water on you to rinse you off, bring you back, lay on the slab again, and then they put these giant bubbles all over you, like having a bubble bath, but not in a tub. And then they rub you, and it's like a slip and slide. They're just sliding over your body with these bubbles. It felt amazing. Then you bring you back to the little fountain, dump more buckets of water on you to rinse you off. Then they wash your hair for you, which was awesome. Then you wrap up in your towel, and they brought me to a little lounge chair and said, wait here, because I was also getting a massage. And they bring me tea, chocolate, nuts, dried fruit. It was amazing. And then I go and have a massage. And then they brought me to a little sitting area, center picture. They brought me a glass of wine. So that was my Turkish bath experience. It was crazy. I was so relaxed. When I got done with that, I had signed up to go see a whirling dervish ceremony. So I had heard that word. I've used that word. I've talked about my kids running around like a whirling dervish. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that it was actually a thing. So the whirling dervish is a ceremony. You go into this round room, no cameras, no talking. It's very solemn. And they come in, they're wearing those long skirts and those hats that look like giant thimbles, and they perform a whirling dervish dance. So they're members of the Sufi Muslim order, and they're known for their ecstatic whirling dance, which is a form of meditation and worship. And so this whirling dance is a ritualistic practice where the dervishes spin in a counterclockwise direction, representing the Earth's orbit and a spiritual journey to God. And the dervishes seek to achieve a state of ecstasy and spiritual union with God. So they walk into the room, there's like maybe six of them. They never say a word. They bow to each other. They walk in a circle around the room. But eventually, they start spinning and they start spinning and spinning and spinning. It looked like their eyes were closed. And eventually their arms start rising up over their head. And then they start spinning around and also spinning in a circle. And they never fall. They don't get dizzy. They don't bang into each other. And they did it for like 40 minutes. It was absolutely amazing. And so
Was there music, Jenny?
There's music. The music is performed by 5 or 6 other guys dressed similarly, sitting on the side, and they have this variety of instruments. So there's that flute kind of thing. There's these things that look like a kind of ukulele, and they will play this music. And these guys just spin and spin and spin, and it's mesmerizing. And I was saying to the cat guy, how the heck do they learn how to do that? And he said they actually have when they're training a spike in the floor, and they'll have a hole in their shoe, and they put the shoe with the hole in the spike so that one foot is kind of anchored there, and then they spin and they spin and they practice. So I don't know if this will come through. I'm gonna show you a picture of it. This was us doing the beach. And that was me marveling at the Med because I was just delighted to be in the Mediterranean. Let me see if I can show you these whirling dervishes. Is this moving?
No,
Is it moving?
It's
No.
black.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna go in back and adjust that and see if I can make it work.
Ginny, I think there's something that you have to enable to show videos.
There is.
I
That's-
think so.
So were none of the videos working?
We saw the videos from your pictures. Oh, here
But
we
no.
go.
Wow.
Wow.
That kind of crazy? Oh, it seemed kind of crazy to me.
45 minutes?
It was about 40 minutes. They did occasionally did stuff in between, but it was a lot of spinning, a lot of spinning. I was just like, oh my God, how are we doing this? Anyway, whirling dervishes. So anyway, that was Turkey. It was a great
Great.
trip. It was really interesting, and I realized how little I knew about the Middle East, Islam, all of that. I was like a sponge asking people like, what is that you're eating? What is that? What are they doing? What is that noise? But anyway, so I learned a lot and it was good for me. I would go again. It was absolutely fascinating. And the hiking was beautiful. And I was went from feeling intimidated to feeling really confident and had a great time.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Thanks. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna,
Yeah.
Do you know how high up you were at your highest point looking down at the Mediterranean and the other islands?
um
Roughly? You may not, but
I did, but now I'm drawing a blank, but
whatever.
not it was, a few thousand feet. It wasn't like doing Mount Washington.
But still, yeah.
But a lot of rough hiking. You had to pay attention. It was big rocks or medium-sized rocks or giant rocks. There was some forest, soft walking in through pine forest kind of stuff, but a lot of rocky, rough terrain.
Yeah.
So
It
there was
was
one.
it was interesting in Istanbul to see the two mosques, one which was part of Constantinople, and then the other one which was Ottoman, because you could see, I mean, you could see the influence on each other. You could see the arches in one that looked more Romanesque. I don't know if I'm making this up. I don't think so. And then the mosque, obviously, more Eastern.
Mhm.
I,
There's just
so
when you're
curious
you're
to know what
listening.
the connections are over history.
So when you were listening to the tour guide, it was layers and layers of history, like here or there, and then comes the Ottomans, and then there's, so, and you could, if you were a buff of architecture and things like that, he would point out, here's these are flatter rocks and these are rounded and these are a little was lost on me after a while, like, you know, millions of ruins. But they're everywhere. It's like you're just walking along in a trail and wow, you're the ruins or tombs.
And then the obelisk, I'm sorry if I'm talking too
No, go
much,
ahead.
but the obelisk, might not remember my history enough, but connects with either the Old Kingdom or New Kingdom, Egypt, around 3500. I have to be reminded by someone, but I wondered whatever that means or not.
Yeah, the obelisk, that one was over 3,500 years old.
Right.
The amphitheater, there were so many amphitheaters. Were those Greek or Roman or
Yes.
both? Both.
Yes, yes. It seemed like that you would look at one that was from Greek and one that was Roman. This is tension between the Turks and the Greeks that I guess has gone on for a long time.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's just a lot of mixture of stuff. So like that first mosque was a church and then it became a mosque. And so they covered up all the saints and yeah, it was just fascinating to see it all. So much history. There's so
No.
much history. Yeah. Yeah.
Those cliffs, the tombs and that were carved into the cliffs, the sculptures, were those made out of the rock that was the cliff, or was that something other material that was brought up there?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I assumed it was carved in the rock, but they could have brought some pieces to do that as
Mhm.
well. They were impressive, and I kept saying, did people once live in these? And they're like, no, no, these are tombs. I'm like, they're so ornate, nobody lived there? He's like, no, no, they're tombs. I'm like, okay. But it was a fascinating place. And the people are, they're so kind. These people that multiple times we ate in people's homes. And they were just so kind and so generous and so welcoming. And it's a typical thing in Turkey that they invite people into their homes. They don't eat, they stand down or they even stay outside and they have you eat, just and they're not rich people but they just serve you and just everything is for you to enjoy. It was pretty nice. It was pretty
Jenny,
nice.
isn't Antalya where there was an earthquake recently?
I think there was. We have apparently a lot of earthquakes.
Well, there was a horrible, horrible earthquake.
Yeah.
And I thought it was near Antalya.
Yeah, I think
Wondering if you
that's
saw
right.
any evidence of
I,
that.
I didn't. I didn't, and they didn't specifically talk about that other than say that they have a fair number of earthquakes.
Well, there was a 6.2 magnitude earthquake probably after you left. 'Cause my husband and I had been thinking about going to Turkey and we kind of
I
put
didn't cause
off.
it, honest. No incidents.
So I don't
There
think
were-
people died, but people got injured jumping from their balconies out of fear
Wow.
that their building would fall down.
Wow. There were protests when
Oh, yeah.
the
I read
day
about
before
that.
we were flying in. So there was all this, frantic, are we safe? Are we safe? And they're like, yeah, it's not happening right where we are. And I had I talked to a few of them about the politics there, and there was a huge divide. There were people that wanted to have a more democratic, I think it was that mayor that he locked up, Erdogan. And the cab driver said, he's done some bad stuff, but truly he's the best leader he's amazing. He's so great. So there were very divisive views about the politics there. Um, the guy who was supportive of him said he's made it safe. He got rid of terrorists. We have the best airport in the world. We have the best hospital in the world. And he's made all that happen. And then there's others that say, yeah, he's a dictator. It was interesting being the only American there because I'm thinking, oh, I just need a break from our situation. And these women, mostly women that I was with in the morning, they would have looked at their little feeds and they'd be like, what are you doing? What are you people doing? Bring up my retirement, my investments. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. It was interesting. They are very, very aware of our politics. Very aware. It's interesting.
Everywhere is. I mean, we just
Yeah.
live in a little bubble and we don't pay attention to the rest of the world, but the rest of the world pays attention to us. I mean,
Yes.
Absolutely.
And they're concerned.
I've heard about the hospital they have there, from the standpoint of they do these, it's like the equivalent of a full day executive physical, where you see multiple doctors and have like every conceivable test, and you have a concierge walk you through, and at the end of the day, they go over everything with you, et cetera, and it's like $800.
Wow.
It's become a destination
Yeah.
for people to go.
Yeah.
It's a big place for people to go to have dental implants.
Hmm.
Well, this-
Apparently, even with the flight over, it's still, if you need like more than a few, if you need like your whole mouth or something, it's a bargain, even with the flight over.
Well, my cab driver was very proud of his country and was telling me that we will very shortly be one of the top 5. So there'll be England and Russia and China, US, and us.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, he was like, you know, we are rocking it. Our ratio to the dollar's changing dramatically, and we are a growing progressive company, and look out.
Well, the only time I've been to Turkey was like 4 hours in the airport. The airport is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've never ever been in an airport like that. It's like a city.
You in the new airport or the old airport? The
Uh,
new airport's been online for maybe 3 or 4 years, I think.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
guess it was the old airport then. I don't know, but it was
Okay.
like a city.
Well,
I
he
was
was
just
saying
amazed.
that they have the biggest and best airline in the world, airport, because they have the most flights and the most
Right. Yeah.
concurrent flights, and you know all these statistics of how big they are, and 3,000 police at the airport. I'm like, whoa, that do you need those police? Is that why do you have all those police there? Heathrow, which is where I flew in, um, my issue with Heathrow is I could not find a place to lay down or
Yeah.
sit in a comfortable chair anywhere. I walked around because I was there a layover for like 5 hours, and I had just flown a long flight. I was exhausted, and I'm like, I just want to lay down. I just want to lean, and they were just seats with metal bar arms.
Yeah.
That's it. And I kept looking at the floor, going, should I lay on the floor? The floor didn't look very clean. And I just kept walking, going, is there a massage chair somewhere? I went to one of those lounges to pay to go in. And I said, if I pay to go in here, what do I get? And they said, oh, there's food and it's like $40. And I said, is there anywhere where I could lay down or just lean back? And then they're like, no, it's just sitting up chairs. I'm like, ah.
Mhm.
So it was actually torturous. It was torturous to have nowhere to get comfortable anywhere for 5 hours. It was crazy.
Yes. I had a 7-hour layover in Heathrow, and I was actually flying business class. So I'm in the BA lounge, which is, I think, the largest that they have in the world, being in Heathrow. And I had to like walk around like a sleuth for 10 minutes, trying to find someone who was about to leave so I could snag their chair. And this is in the business class lounge. So it's
Wow.
not, yes, it is better, but it is really not a relaxing experience.
Yeah, I thought for such a big airport that there would be somewhere, anywhere.
The
Um,
Virgin Lounge at Heathrow is the place to go.
Ah,
what it,
I've
The
heard
Virgin
that.
one.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah.
I've heard that.
Mm.
the Virgin Lounge, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the Virgin Air Lounge, because
Virgin.
they have
I
white
couldn't get into the
tablecloth.
Virgin Lounge.
forget it, Ginny. You
Ship
can't
sailed.
go. Ginny, you can't go. You don't qualify.
With 3 kids, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Well, it's in the Delta terminal, so
Uh,
I don't know if you were in that terminal, but
I was flying British Air, so
Yeah, no, then you'd be in Terminal 5, yeah.
that part was miserable. It was the worst part of the trip was my 2 Heathrow
Mhm.
pass-throughs.
Mhm.
Um, but met some great people. You know, it's amazing when you guys have done a lot of traveling with groups. When you're with people like every day, all day, every day, it's amazing how you feel like you just know them. And then when the trip's over, it's like this strange feeling like you're not going to see them again. I hadn't done that in a bit, and so that was kind of a strange thing. Like you know them so well, you see them every day. I had my buddies that I had wine with every night, and poof, then the trip's over. Bittersweet.
Everybody spoke English in your group?
Everybody in my group spoke English. The Islamic woman and her husband also spoke Islamic, and the tour guide obviously spoke Turkish, so he did all the talking when it was needed. But yeah, a lot of English there, a lot of English in the cities. But when you get outside the cities, no one was speaking
So the
English.
day you were alone, at the end of the trip, you had no trouble communicating?
No, I didn't, I wasn't trying very much. I did my Turkish bath. I didn't say a word through that. And then I went to the Whirling Dervish where the no talking. And then when I got done with that, I'm like, I'm going to find a nice little place to have dinner. And I was really hungry. So I'm looking at all these places like, I don't want lamb, don't want lamb. And I do want a glass of wine. So, so I find this place and they have chicken and everything was outdoors, all outdoor seating. That was really nice. And so I find this place and the food looks really good. And I sit down and I'm like, and I'll have a glass of wine. And they're like, no, you won't. And I'm like, no. And they're like, no, that you can't have any alcohol within such and such distance from a mosque. And
Uh,
all these restaurants on this street were all like next door to the mosque. I'm like, darn it. I survived, but I who knew? Anyway, good trip.
That's the
Yeah.
same in Morocco too.
Sounds it. It sounds it.
Jill, I
Yeah,
have to ask you, you're labeled as Jill Licata Russell Cave.